A landmark election underway in Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir. After nearly a decade and for the first time since the region lost its autonomy, over 200 candidates are vying for 90 assembly seats. Opposition parties have promised to return the region's statehood, while the ruling BJP hopes the vote will embolden its influence. So just how pivotal is this poll for Jammu and Kashmir? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. Over the last 30 years, the citizens of Muslim-majority Indian-administered Kashmir have lost more and more interest in voting, seeing themselves as too far removed from the real powers in Delhi. But that changed during India's general election in May, when almost 60% came to the polls. And now, with so much at stake in their first regional election in 10 years, many are expecting turnout to be at least as high, if not higher. From returning their state's autonomy to day-to-day issues like healthcare, water, and electricity, Kashmiris have a wealth of reasons to elect new leaders. Here's a look now at this pivotal election.
The Jammu and Kashmir Legislative Assembly election will be held over 3 phases between September 18th and October 1st. While the region has traditionally been known for boycotts to protest against New Delhi rule, there are signs voter turnout will be high. During India's recent national poll, the Election Commission recorded nearly 59% participation in Jammu and Kashmir, the highest turnout in 35 years. Jammu and Kashmir's election appears to be a contest between India's ruling party, the BJP, and a coalition of local and national opposition parties called the India Bloc. The BJP is fielding candidates for 19 of the region's 50 assembly seats, mostly in Hindu-majority areas. The main national opposition, the Congress Party, is teaming up with longtime local partner, the National Conference. There are also many independent local candidates that could heavily influence the final results. One of the most important among them is Sheikh Abdul Rashid, popularly known as Engineer Rashid, who recently announced an alliance between his Awami Ittihad party and candidates backed by the banned Jamaat-e-Islami. The Kashmiri politician won a parliamentary seat in India's general election, while he was jailed on terrorism funding charges. He has now been released for the duration of the region's local election. He's been accused of acting as a proxy for the BJP, a claim which he denies. In 2019, India's government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, revoked Constitutional Article 370, which granted special autonomy to Jammu and Kashmir. The move triggered widespread protests. The article was one of the preconditions for the once princely state of Jammu and Kashmir to join India at the end of the British colonial era. Several opposition leaders in this election have pledged to restore Kashmir's statehood if they come to power, which is anticipated to be a key election issue. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited Jammu and Kashmir twice this year, pledging economic development worth over $770 million. Yet, many Kashmiris are skeptical.
The Bharatiya Janata Party is going to ensure a Jammu and Kashmir that will be terror-free and will be a paradise for tourists. Our Bharatiya Janata Party's Jammu and Kashmir unit has announced an employment scheme. Hundreds of thousands of new employment opportunities will be created here.
As the legislative election approaches, security remains tight across Jammu and Kashmir. With 9 million people registered to vote, many hope this election will help foster peace and stability and not deepen divisions in this long-disputed region.
Let's get some perspective now on the election from a Kashmiri activist who is based in London as he faces charges in India for anti-national activity. Muzzammil Ayyub Thakur is the director of the Justice Foundation and the World Kashmiri Freedom Movement. He joins me now from the British capital. Muzzammil, thanks so much for being with us. So as an activist, you have been obviously outspoken against what you see as government oppression of Kashmiri voices, violations of their rights, not just via legislation imposed, but through police brutality, arbitrary detention. So how much does this election matter to the causes you stand for in Kashmir?
Well, every election, the Indian government have exactly the same rhetoric. What exactly are we going to be expecting? What does normalcy, the so-called normalcy, look like? Everything in Kashmir is choreographed. So any participation in the elections now is an expression of resentment to the BJP and a vote against their settler colonial project to force demographic change. So normal isn't really there. Expectations aren't really there, except for the fact, like you mentioned, dissent. Otherwise, if there was some kind of normalcy, we wouldn't see an influx of more Indian troops. We wouldn't see political prisoners continuing to be locked up, senior political prisoners, Asya Andrabi, Masrat Alam, Qasim Faktu, Nahida Nasreen, Yasin Malik. There are so many different names. Fahmida Sofi, Shabir Shah. It isn't normal for the BBC to be banned or even Amnesty to be banned. And it isn't certainly normal to blind children as young as 18 months old or kidnap children as young as 5 or torturing young boys in a mosque with the loudspeaker on.
Okay.
So these expectations from the elections aren't exactly there.
Okay, but still, most are expecting what could be even record high, voter turnout, at least by measurements of the last 35 years or so. Plus, there are some candidates, Engineer Rashid, who has actually just been released on bail and is now contesting the election. So it feels like there are some things that are truly setting this election apart from other polls before.
Well, anyone that knows anything about Kashmir, especially its history, knows that at the end of the day, the Indian government controls everything. So it doesn't matter who really wins. Power is still always going to be with the BJP. And there are reports, it's good that you mentioned about the independents and Engineer Rashid. There are reports that the independent and the BJP's B team, so-called B team, which the BJP themselves have called dummy candidates, are a perfect representation. They're there to split the votes for a hung assembly because a coalition is the only way the BJP could possibly remain in power. So with Engineer Rashid, it's a prime example of why the people came out is because they have rejected and they are dissenting against the BJP's mandate in Kashmir, which is settler colonization and demographic change. And we've seen the effects of the BJP and the Modi government inside Kashmir, which is why the people have started to resist. They are only coming out for the simple purpose to reject the mandate that the BJP and Modi have.
Okay. I have to ask you, Muzzammil, what is your legal status in Kashmir and in India right now, for that matter? You were charged under a terror law for, as I said, anti-national activity, and some accuse you of actually working for Pakistani intelligence.
I wish they would provide me with the evidence. That's one of the biggest problems that we have is that over the last several years, particularly since 2019, the cases that have been built up against myself, as well as many other people in the diaspora, are ludicrous. They're ridiculous. The allegations that have been made have no credibility and no basis, and most importantly, there is no evidence. But because of the kangaroo nature of the courts inside India and the repressive tactics of the Indian government, what they've essentially done is taken away my OCI card, which means that I can no longer travel to Kashmir. They've seized assets. They've clamped down on my family members, my relatives, taking them to jail, killing my uncle, and torturing many of my cousins. So that's the situation as it is. But it's important to understand that there's also this concept of transnational repression. What I'm talking about is assassinations. We've seen it with the Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Canada, who was assassinated on Canadian soil, a Canadian citizen no less. And then, of course, the attempts in America, spies caught in Qatar, and of course in Germany. And recently I was attacked on the streets of London. So the transnational repression is actually there, but things like this aren't going to break us or make us bow to pressure. What's important to understand is that despite whatever happens to us, the situation on the ground is much, much worse because the information just does not get out there.
Quickly, though, if you believe that voters could turn out in high numbers just as an expression of dissent, what could that mean for the BJP in Kashmir? If opposition figures are elected, could we see, for example, do you think, a return to the autonomy that Jammu and Kashmir held before?
I sincerely doubt that because the BJP have already made it abundantly clear that Article 370-35A are not going to come back. And that said, elections are absolutely not a substitute for the United Nations Security Council resolutions. So changing the goalpost or repositioning the goalpost to statehood or even Articles 370-35A doesn't replace the right for people to decide their future and their destiny. So any attempt by the BJP for electioneering or campaigning inside Kashmir and expecting some kind of result, it is always going to be a hung assembly because they know they cannot possibly win an outright majority. They had to do it with the PDP in 2015, and they're going to have to do it with their independent proxies this time around as well.
Muzzammil, Ayyub, Thakur, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Newsmakers. Well, let's broaden out the discussion now and welcome two new panelists from New Delhi. Senior BJP leader and party spokesperson Sudhanshu Mittal, and from Srinagar, senior member of the Indian National Congress and adjunct professor at the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy in Abu Dhabi, Salman Anees Soz. Thanks all so much, both so much really, for being with me. Okay, let me begin in Srinagar. I just need to ask you if you agree with what you heard there from Muzzammil, Ayyub, Thakur.
Well, Muzzammil is sitting in England and I'm sitting in Kashmir. What I can tell you about this election is that this is a very, very important election because we haven't had one in now 10 years. In fact, I contested in 2014. And since then, we haven't had an election. And the BJP, which runs the government at the national level, has controlled the government here for the last 10 years, either directly or indirectly in alliance with another party, the local party, the PDP. And for the last 6 years, there has been direct central government rule in Jammu and Kashmir. And I can tell you, I can report to you that the people of Jammu and Kashmir are all very unhappy because all of the promises of development, etc., they've fallen by the wayside. We can talk about the big issues here whenever we get an opportunity. But overall, I think there's a lot of resentment against the BJP. I think people feel that they have been, in some ways, insulted, hurt, disempowered. Our state was broken into two and then downgraded to union territory status, which means directly controlled by the central government. And by the way, this is the first instance in independent India, in the history of independent India, that any state was downgraded to union territory status. There are huge problems in Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
Of course,
we'll get into those. We'll get into those. But I just have to say very quickly, Salman, that you and Muzzammil both agree that there is very severe resentment, you say, driving voters to the polls against the BJP this time. But unlike Muzzammil, you think this turnout, the potential outcome, can make a serious difference for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Why? And why do you disagree with him on that? He seems to think the BJP is strategizing to make sure that they do still control the region.
The BJP is clearly strategizing to control Jammu and Kashmir post-election. That much is clear. Everybody understands that. Everybody knows that. But as far as the people are concerned, I think the people have a lot of hope that after this, they can at least have recourse to their own representatives, those who will raise their voices. Because right now, people have no recourse. They're basically controlled by a Delhi kind of appointed lieutenant governor and the bureaucrats. So they don't really have their own representatives. Their voices are not really heard. Okay. And that is why I think they feel that this is an opportunity. Just to let your viewers know that this is, of course, I hope that a lot of people come out and vote, because if more people come out to vote, that means our alliance, the Congress Party's alliance with the National Conference, the India alliance, would actually do well. But it's not the case that people have not voted in the past. In fact, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have really held on to democracy and democratic ideals for the last 35 years, despite very, very difficult times. In 2014, 66% people participated in elections. So we should keep that in.
Very true. Okay, Sudhanshu Mittal, though, I mean, you seem to think the BJP, or the BJP seems to think they're quite confident that this election will work in their favor. So why so, having heard what our other guests have said, both Salman and Muzzammil?
It's so ironical that the two guests who spoke are both irrelevant to Kashmir. The Lok Sabha elections which took place just 3 months back, NC, the party which is represented by Mr. Soz, did not have even one single seat out of the 5 seats which are there. And look, he's pontifying. He's telling us that we are rejected by the people of Kashmir, etc., etc., etc. So it's so unfortunate. The commentary of anti-India rhetorics and anti-BJP rhetorics is narrated by people who are irrelevant to Kashmir right now. So is Mr. Thakur, who's sitting there in somewhere in London. Now, just a few rebuttals. Mr. Thakur was talking about the vote by the people. The high percentage of vote by the people is an indication of rejection of BJP. When there was low voting, then also the same narrative was there. It is a rejection of India. It is a rejection of the government. I mean, you please make up your mind. Whether low voting is a rejection or high voting is a rejection. You can't have the cake and eat it also. But irrelevant. Secondly, he was talking about the UN resolution of 49 without telling the audience here that in 51, the people of Jammu and Kashmir voted for a constituent assembly in which all these seats were won by National Conference. And then they gave Kashmir a constitution, the preamble of which said, we, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, having solemnly resolved, etc., to give ourselves a status in India of which we are an integral part. So it's the Constituent Assembly of Kashmir which decided that they were an integral part of India. So the issue of the UN resolution and all is so frivolous and so, irrelevant that the rhetorics has no meaning whatsoever at all. Now, let me come down to BJP. Isn't it so elating for BJP that from nowhere we are now really going to be the largest single party? Last time also, we were just about the largest single party. And it's a matter of pride to us. I mean, the acceptance, what is acceptance in democracy when people vote for you? What is rejection in democracy when people do not vote for you? People vote for us. And that is the reason why we are relevant, why we're there. Yes, we have changed the status of Jammu and Kashmir and we've abrogated 370, we've abolished 35A. Why? Because we have given Jammu and Kashmir as a union territory a new identity where democracy is functional at the grassroots level. They all talked about not having democracy. Do you know that there were elections, just one minute, this is very critical point. There were Panchayati Raj elections in which 35,000 elected representatives were elected. This happened during our regime. You see, what has happened is that the hegemony of the NCP, National Congress, and the PDP got demolished because at the grassroots level, there was democracy and 35,000 people got elected. They have replaced. That's the truth of Kashmir.
Okay. I mean, Salman, it's amazing once again that there are two incredibly different realities actually being described on either side.
Yes, there are. So let me get to Mr. Mittal's points one by one. But by the way, he just mentioned this grassroots democracy. What he will not tell you is that in 2011, there were elections to the lowest body that's called Panchayat, basically village bodies, where 85 to 90% of the people participated in the election. If Mr. Mittal can prove that the same number of people, or even half the number of people actually voted in the elections that they conducted at the grassroots level, I will leave my party. I will leave politics. If he can prove it with election commission data, he cannot. Now, let me tell you why. He talked about how we've basically set up a new identity. We're doing amazing things for this. And by the way, he did say that my party was not relevant to Kashmir. We should actually say Jammu and Kashmir because Kashmir is just one part of the region. Mr. Mittal's party did not even contest any parliamentary election in Kashmir Valley. There are 3 seats here. They did not even contest. This time, they're basically not contesting 1/3 of the seats in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, why is that? Let me tell you. For all of the propaganda about progress in Jammu and Kashmir, you will be surprised, or your viewers might be surprised to hear, that the unemployment rate for young people, youth unemployment, in Jammu and Kashmir is the second worst in the country. And female unemployment, and this is government data, this is not my data, female unemployment is the highest in the country. Your viewers may be interested to know that during this time, the percent of people in Jammu and Kashmir who are afflicted by drug abuse is 10%. 10% of our people, our children, are afflicted by drug abuse. Under whose government has this happened? Then they will tell you that then one more thing. Then they will tell you that we have finished off terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. Meanwhile, just recently, we've had many attacks in the Jammu region. By the way, again, government data, not my data, government data, our government's data, says that in the 5 years since 2019, when Article 370 was abrogated, more people and more security personnel have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir between 2019 to 23 compared to 2011 to 2015 when our government was there. So all of this is propaganda. The BJP, you see, the BJP is a propagandist party. And what the reason the people of India actually almost defeated the prime minister in the constituency of Varanasi, his victory margin came from 500,000 to 150,000. He almost lost his seat. The reason is that they have started believing their own propaganda, but the people are going to...
I'd like to come back to Jammu and Kashmir and the issues that voters are looking at there. And Sudhanshu Mittal, I'd like to have you respond to this, because there have been more than a few analysts now that are saying actually the BJP could lose in Jammu, even though it's not a Muslim majority part of the state, because locals are complaining that because of the BJP changes and changing the constitution to now Article 370, to allow foreigners to buy land in Jammu and Kashmir when they weren't able to before, and now the residents of Jammu themselves are finding themselves being edged out of their own market. Does the BJP know that there are these problems, or do you completely deny that that's an issue at all?
I don't need to deny. The facts are otherwise. There are 2 seats in Jammu, and we won both of them. If this was the issue just 3 months back, the people have voted for us. I mean, which analysts do you talk about, and what is their analysis?
I'm reading this in the Indian media itself.
Allow me to finish. The so-called analysts have not come up with something which has happened post Lok Sabha elections. This is all what is being claimed happened before the Lok Sabha elections. And yet the people voted for BJP. Is that not a testimony of what is going to happen, and proving the so-called analysts, their analysis is absurd? Now, Mr. Soz had to rely on falsehood. I don't blame him, because if you do not have a cogent argument, you can only resort to falsehood. Mr. Soz, you said we are contesting only 1/3 seats in Jammu and Kashmir. Sir, we are contesting 62 seats. Allow me to finish. Please, allow me to finish. We are contesting 62 seats. Go back and see the recording and what you said, because I'm sure you do not know what you say. 62 seats we are contesting. We are contesting 19 seats in the Kashmir region, and we are contesting all 43 seats in the Jammu region. How many seats are you contesting, sir? You are not contesting.
I'll tell you what, I'd like to talk about actually what the outcome of this election could be, rather than what the number of seats are.
Allow me to finish. Mr. Soz has made his argument. Allow me to finish.
Okay, but please make this more relevant to the election outcome itself.
It is relevant, because all the propaganda which is being aired here is complete nonsense. Go and see Srinagar, and then you'll realize the winds of change. He talked about people getting killed and all that. Mr. Soz, do you see stone peddling today? No. Do you see lockdowns today? No. Do you see writings today? No. What do you see? You see peace. You go to Lal Chowk, and what do you see at Lal Chowk? Do you see the security forces there at Lal Chowk? No. You see shops thriving. You see business there. You see tourists there. You see a booming economy in Srinagar, sir, where you are sitting, which you did not sit.
Again, this different reality being described. You both have been very vocal about.
That is the reality. It's for everybody.
Completely different from what the opposition is actually describing. But very quickly, we only have a minute left, and I need to ask Salman about this, because it's very important. Your party has made a promise to actually reverse the autonomy that was taken away from Jammu and Kashmir. I want to hear you say now, if that indeed is a promise, can you do it if the Supreme Court has actually backed the BJP in revoking that article? Is this something you are genuinely promising people in Jammu and Kashmir?
He's not even fighting the majority seats. How can he do it?
Okay.
He's not fighting majority seats.
Please let him finish. Go ahead.
Should not interrupt. He's a senior member of the BJP. He should not interrupt. I'm not interrupting him. I had said the BJP is not contesting 1/3 of the seats. He misunderstood. It was not a falsehood. So he was right. He said 62%. I said 1/3 of the seats they're not contesting. And we're contesting in an alliance. That is why we're not contesting all the seats. Otherwise, last time we contested 82 seats.
Will you give Jammu and Kashmir their autonomy back if
How would you
you win the election?
The majority?
No, the Congress Party, I think you're referring to other parties' manifestos. The Congress Party has basically said that we are going to restore statehood in Jammu and Kashmir. Statehood of Jammu and Kashmir is a right of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. No power, not Prime Minister Modi, not the BJP, not any of these people are going to be able to stop us. Once we win this election, we will start the process of getting back our statehood, and that will be. And by the way, not just that. We're also going to protect the people's land and their government jobs in Jammu and Kashmir, because that is what the people want us to do.
Salman, I'm sorry, we're actually going to have to finish it there, though. So unfortunately, we're completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers.
He talked about statistics of the grassroots, this thing. 53% of people voted in those elections, Mr. Soz, and they were not conducted by Election Commission of India.
Okay, that will have to be the final word. So unfortunately, we're out of time. I'd like to thank both of my panelists so much for being with us. Our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.